Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today we're going to share Wendigo horror stories. First story. I'm related to a Wendigo. Sorry if the title seems abrupt. After reading this, it'll make sense. I hope. You've heard this story a million times before. I'm a teenager who recently moved to Minnesota. So recently, in fact, I can barely remember the town's name. Just search for generic towns on any search engine, and I'm certain it'll show up. I'm not going to try avoiding exposition because I feel inclined to share this information with as many online strangers as I can. I moved into the town a month ago with my mom and dad. I lived in Virginia before, so adapting to Minnesota was not something I was thrilled about. I had to leave the few friends I had. My parents assured me that I would find people to hang out with. I didn't really need any friends. I work better alone. My parents let me bring my Xbox, but I believe they hoped I would leave it behind. Apparently, we moved here because my grandpa died. We are inheriting his fortune. When I first left the car, I set my eyes on the house. No, my house. I had to live there. It was a shack, if anything. It was a one-story house with faded log walls and a drywall interior. It had 2 bedrooms, a living room/kitchen, a bathroom, and an attic. My dad quickly monopolized the kitchen for his work. His laptop never left the island in the kitchen. My mom looked for a job around town. I explored the bleak house, hoping to find something fun. I'm bored. I complained to my dad. He shrugged. There's plenty of things to do around here. Go shopping, go explore the woods. Find people to hang out with. Wow, thanks for the help, I said, masking the sarcasm in my voice. The look he gave me told me I wasn't hiding it well. Maybe I didn't want to. I expected Grandpa's fortune to be grander, but what did I know? I never met him, at least when I was sentient. My dad raised his hand and gestured towards his birthmark, 2 red splotches on the palm. This mark means you're a son of the Barkley family. If you embarrass yourself, you're embarrassing your bloodline, he insisted. I rolled my eyes, being intentionally rebellious. You've said that a million times. I don't care anymore. Just go somewhere, I have a call, my father said, shooing me away like an animal. I grabbed my coat and went out the door. I walked down the sidewalk of the bustling town. The cars slowly drove past, their exhaust pipes producing fog in the cold, winter air. Everything foul here was fair in its own way. I guess their fumes propelled them towards their goal somehow. Unlike me, who was aimlessly walking until something interesting happened. I stumbled on the icy sidewalk before grabbing on to a streetlight. I heard snickering behind me. I turned to see a group of 3 teenagers. You new here? One asked, pulling his beanie over his ears. I nodded, nervously rubbing the outline of my birthmark on my left hand. Well, in that case, my name is James, he held out his gloved hand. I shook it politely. He examined me closely, his freckles seemingly popping out of his pale face in the cold. You really are new. I only assumed as much because you almost took a tumble there. He gestured towards the ground. I'm not the most graceful, I said. Anyway, who were the others with you? I asked. James turned to look at the other 2 teens. This guy here is Kyle. Upon hearing his name, he gave me a flimsy wave. Kyle had messy blonde hair and was taller than the other 2. He could pass for a surfer if he had a tan, which he didn't. The other person was a girl. She quickly introduced herself as Lucy. She had long, slightly curly hair, a wide face, and an expression I could only summarize as irritation. Can we go now? She asked James. Not yet. We gotta welcome the guy. There ain't many kids around here, remember? He said. Lucy scowled. Our group is fine. We don't need anyone else to hang out with. She wrapped her scarf around her neck. Kyle shrugged. I don't care what he does. Wait a minute. What's your name, anyway? He turned to me. My name is Drew. Andrew, if you're feeling brave. I said jokingly. All right, Andrew, Lucy said, her voice dripping with venom. We have to go now. What did I do to this woman? I didn't understand. James gave me an apologetic look. I guess we better be going. James said, wait, one more thing. I interjected. He turned around and raised an eyebrow, waiting for me to elaborate. Where's the candy store? I asked. Kyle pointed to a store on the other side of the street as they left. They were a bit standoffish, but at least they weren't pricks. I crossed the street, entered the candy store, and purchased an overpriced bag of nameless gummy worms. I left the store, pushing open the glass door as the bell rang. I wandered through the town, mapping every building as I got closer to the woods. I reached the border between the town and the forest. The trees were bare, devoid of leaves. Even still, the forest seemed thick and unforgiving. I stepped into the woods and wandered aimlessly. The bitter winter air nipped at my nose and cheeks, making me regret not wearing a scarf. "Hello," a voice called out from the darkness. I perked up at the sudden voice. "Who's there?" I asked, realizing too late that my voice was unsteady and nervous. Not a good first impression on my end. "I don't know who you are," the voice said. I tilted my head, trying to get the unknown person to see my confusion. "Where are you?" I asked the woods. The cold breeze stirred dead leaves past me. "You are new." It spoke once again. Its voice was mystical, as if blending with the wind. Maybe it was the wind looking back. Even so, it spoke words I could understand. I chewed on a sour gummy worm. "I am hungry," the wind said. I held out a gummy worm. "Do you want some of my food?" I asked. I don't know why I even bothered talking to whatever it was. The voice paused, as if it was thinking. A rattling sound echoed through the forest. Maybe it was a woodpecker. "I'm starving," its voice lowered, sounding raspy. I tossed the bag of candy into the forest, wasting $13. I gave him my food. "Eat all you want." I heard loud footsteps crunching in the snow. Tick, tick, clack, clack. Unknown sounds echoed through the forest. The footsteps came closer. A dog rushed past me from behind, barking into the woods. I looked down, startled slightly at the Labrador. It barked aggressively, its tail pointed upright. An older man rushed over to the dog, grabbing its collar. He turned to me. "Sorry, kid," he said. "Mabel gets loose too often, but I always know to find her here." He chuckled. He went silent and turned to the forest. A bird called out from the woods. He grimaced. "Kid," he turned to me, "don't go in there. Hunters could shoot you on accident, you could get lost, you could even drown in the lake. Stay very well away." I nodded. "What about the guy in the forest? Isn't he in danger too?" His expression grew concerned. "There's nobody in there." The wind whistles through the thick branches. "It sounds almost like voices," he said. I felt like he didn't believe in his own reasoning. He sighed. "You new here?" he observed. I confirmed his statement. He cleared his throat, petting his dog's yellow fur. "Listen up then. These woods aren't safe, but," his expression darkened, "it can at times be safer than the town." I insisted he elaborate. "The town has frequent famines. Food spoils and berries stop being as plentiful. We don't get a lot of imports, either. When we get bad storms, we have to rely on stored canned goods. It isn't nearly as bad as it once was. Even if food is readily available, the danger is still there." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I'm saying that people abandon their humanity. They eat each other when everything dries up. There isn't always a justification to it. People just snap." I was at a loss for words. He sighed. "It isn't like that anymore. We haven't had an incident in 5 years. So why warn me?" I asked. He paused. "Because it isn't going to stop, as long as it still breathes." He muttered, looking at the forest. I asked. "It lives in the woods. It never bothered people physically, just cursed them in a way. Until a few months ago, that is. We've started to distance our kids from the forest where it lives." Mabel whimpered and dropped her tail low. I groaned. "What is it?" I said, getting impatient. I wasn't willing to hear a vague campfire story. "It's a wendigo, a beast of Indian, native folklore." "Do you know what they are?" he asked. I nodded. "I've seen YouTube videos on them, even read a few books." "You think a cryptid is out there?" He stared into the forest. "Absolutely. They don't believe me, but as long as one person believes, the Wendigo will be more cautious in its approach." "You came here not long after the old man died. Why is that?" he asked me. If you're referring to Clarence Barkley, he's my grandfather. I explained. My condolences, the man said. No worries, I never knew him anyway. I said reassuringly. The trees creaked and branches snapped. A strong gust of wind blew past. Oh, he said. Good for you. Was he an asshole? I asked. He shrugged. He was entitled and snobby, as most rich people are. He was usually secluded, though. The man explained. He rarely came into town, and when he did, it was usually to buy meat. Lots of meat. Apparently, my grandfather was aloof. He stayed out of everyone's way when he could. He wasn't the nicest when people met him, though. So why did you ask why I came here? I asked. Nobody ever comes here unless they have something to gain from it. I'm assuming you were claiming his will. Yeah, that's about it. I said. The man exhaled and watched the trees. Do you know how to become a Wendigo? He asked me. I haven't really tried before. I said sarcastically, but I do know how they come to be. Good. Try not to lose yourself. If you get hungry, eat whatever you can find. If you want more personal things, pray to God. Be happy with what you have. The man said, I'm familiar with that stuff. I'm a good person, or I try to be. I explained. The man chuckled. Just keep it in mind. Mabel tucked her tail between her legs and whimpered as she stared into the forest. The old man sighed. Looks like I should head back. He waved goodbye as he walked his dog home. I went home after that. I entered the house, knocked off my boots, and peeled away at my winter gear until I was back into my casual attire. My father was busy on his computer, picking up work calls. He groaned. God damn it. This is not the right time for a prank call. He stormed off, dropping the phone on the table. I heard the bathroom door slam shut. I crept over to the phone and held it to my ear curiously. On the other end was static. How was it a prank call? It could be an accidental dial. The phone suddenly picked up a new sound. It sounded like TV static, but it increased in volume slowly. After about 10 seconds, the sound was a deafening screech. I hung up the phone. I decided to snoop around the house, looking for any stuff left behind. I wish we inherited the mansion, but the repair costs would double our debt. I blew the dust off of an old laptop someone left for some reason. It was even plugged in and fully charged. I turned on a laptop. Despite being a newer model, the laptop only had retro games. I decided to play Doom instead. If this computer belonged to my grandpa, he had good taste. After 30 minutes of Doom, I played some sort of deer hunting game. It was 3D, but very primitive for a 3D game. The deer were basically advanced polygons. I aimed my cursor at a moving deer, causing it to activate a cutscene of the bullet traveling towards the deer. Before the bullet hit, the color of the screen inverted and crackled with a buzzing static. The deer's peaceful black eyes glowed white. Its face almost twisted into a sadistic smile. Of course, it was just a weird glitch. The deer's antlers multiplied in size as the 3D model began to lose its form. The computer shut itself off. I sighed and stuffed the laptop into a drawer. I was going to get it fixed eventually, so I don't have to buy any duplicate games on my Xbox. Over the next few weeks, everything just got worse. The voice in the wilderness kept talking, although by now I had ignored it completely. Everything was fine until it said my name. I walked by the forest entrance to go to school and meet up with my friends and Lucy. Andrew, the voice called out like a taunting child. I froze and turned to the forest. How do you know my name? The words sat on the edge of my tongue. At the last moment, I held those words back. If I gave the thing any attention, I would surely regret it. The wind rattled the dead branches like some sort of bony wind chime. The icy air felt like daggers on my skin. I walked away, resuming my travels. Onto you it rasped. I ignored it. You've grown so much since the last time I saw you, it said clear as day. I continued to walk away. It was just saying that to get my attention, whatever it was. This Wendigo has been a pain for quite some time. I wasn't going to give it the satisfaction. It went silent as I walked away. As I walked down the road, I noticed a dead deer on the curb. I walked around it, but a few minutes later, that task would be impossible. The entire road was flooded with dead deer. Piles upon piles of corpses littered the streets, bleeding into the drainage systems. Even getting near the pile sent an overwhelming stench towards me. I vomited in the grass. The putrid odor rattled my systems and brought me to my knees. The corpses were suddenly dragged one by one into the bushes. My head pounded as I tried my best to get away. I felt a lanky, cold hand grab my ankle and drag me away slowly. I turned around to see white eyes staring at me from the bushes, concealed in the morning darkness. The extended bony arm tugged weakly. The silver eyes never left me. Its translucent, pale skin crinkled with every movement, as if it was too tight for its own body. The faint outline of its humanoid face made me wish I was dead beforehand. I dug my nails into the concrete road, desperately trying to anchor myself. As I was dragged closer to the bushes, I could see its disgusting human teeth emerge from the shadows to devour me. I used my free leg to kick the face of the hollow creature. It groaned in pain and released me. I made a mad dash for the school, stumbling over the corpses of deer. When I assumed I was safe, I turned around to see the largest deer in the pile being dismembered by the arms. The head was ripped off with a sound I could only compare to a tree snapping. That deer must have lived for at least a decade. Now, its elder antlers were being brandished by an imposter. I made it to school, which probably wasn't the best idea. I was so distracted by what just happened that it didn't occur to me that I was covered in deer blood. The classroom shrieked in fear, dragging me out of my brain-dead state. I was brought into the counselor's office for questioning. They didn't believe my story until they looked out the window. Of course, I never mentioned the actual Wendigo. I just said that a herd of deer died, which wasn't false, but not completely true either. I was certain it was the Wendigo. It was starving and undoubtedly bloodthirsty. It was also cold. Its touch was like the pole of a stop sign in winter. They eventually gave me some temporary clothes and sent me on my way. In third period, an ear-splitting scream rang from the forest. It sounded like a mix of a human, elk, and electronic static. It was impossibly loud, causing us to plug in headphones or cover our ears. The sound continued for the next week. Our town adapted quickly. We learned some basic hand signals and got very good at understanding body language. The town became barren of all animals. Deer had migrated to a new area. Dogs fled to find safety, ending up in ditches or dumpsters. I found Mabel under my bed, which scared the hell out of me. I was sitting on my couch when my mom motioned for me to take out my earbuds. I was greeted with the sound of silence. I almost teared up in joy. Authorities investigated the source of the sound with no success. They couldn't even blame anything. The mayor eventually told the town not to worry about it. To no one's surprise, everyone kept worrying about it. I wandered through the cold town. I bought candy, as usual, and went on with my day. James, Kyle, and Lucy intercepted me. Long time no see. James said to me, "We thought it was you that was screaming all week," he said jokingly. "What do you want from me?" I said, realizing too late that it sounded rude and confrontational. Luckily, James didn't pick up on the change of tone. "We want to go exploring." Kyle said, "They want you to come with them." "It wasn't my idea." Lucy said, "Thanks." I said, "So where are we going?" "We're going to go to the old mansion in the woods. It'll be just like one of those old movies." "You in?" James said excitedly. Every instinct I had knew to decline his offer. No sane person would randomly wander into the woods. That's not only dangerous, but stupid. "Sure, I'll go." Lucy sighed, likely hoping I would decline. I'm not the best at understanding social cues, so I have no clue why this chick was so pissed at me. Maybe she had a crush on me. That would be cool. "When are we going?" I asked. "Now." James answered quickly. I didn't bother asking if they had all the supplies. Lucy had a comically large backpack strapped onto her shoulders. Despite being shorter than all of us, she was the strongest by far. What a terrifying combination. We made our way through the frozen forest. The only sound we heard was our footsteps. When we got closer to the manor, we occasionally heard disembodied voices conversing from somewhere in the woods. "Are others here?" I asked nervously. It occurred to me that this was my grandfather's house. At least it looked much better in the pictures. The windows weren't boarded up back then. Those voices are always there, Kyle said as we reached the front porch. We opened the door, which was strangely unlocked. At least it made me feel less uneasy about breaking into my grandfather's house. When we entered the manor, I realized why my family had our own house. The mansion was run down, overwhelmed with cobwebs and deep scrapes in the wood. It looked as if a bear had been living here. Lucy aimed the flashlight around, the bright light waving in the darkness. The light reflected off of a bleached deer skull with large antlers that had been mounted on the wall. We went up the stairs. The door to the bathroom was locked. Lucy slammed into the door, snapping it in half. We ducked under the broken door and stared into the bathtub. The entire tub was filled with decayed chicken bones and decomposed meat. Geez, the old man was a glutton, James remarked. Bones were haphazardly thrown around the bathroom. We dug through the pile, looking for something of value. There was nothing. Kyle scoffed. Maybe he took his money to the grave. We aren't digging him up, are we? I asked. There's no body. James said. Even his death is shrouded in mystery, he said ominously, expecting a fearful reaction from one of us. Kyle exhaled. It isn't as deep as you make it seem. Dead branches tapped against the window. The cold breeze made the house feel somewhat smaller. I couldn't help but notice that the tree looked off. It was like one of those insects that look like leaves. They look like a leaf, but they're alive. We continued snooping around the rooms, splitting up along the way. I went back to the front door and began to close it, as we had left it open before. The voice called out from the forest. You heard my call. It spoke. I closed the door. I chose to ignore it as usual. I was desensitized to it at this point. It hasn't done much to me so far, so I doubt it could deal any real damage. It continued talking as I walked away from the door. I snooped around for a bit longer. Nothing gathered my interest. For a mansion, it was absolutely disgusting. The door rattled as the wind beat against it. I should have known better then. Blaming things on the wind only got me so far. From upstairs, I watched with bated breath as the doorknob clicked and opened. The room grew cold, and a draft embraced me. Snow glistened against the dusty carpet. The door creaked open completely. Standing on the porch was something I couldn't begin to explain. It had two long, emaciated legs. It could be human, but the hooves denied my reasoning. Massive, bony hands hung down from its body, its slender fingers twitching and clicking claws together. Multicolored fur coated most of the body in brutal patches, like a shaven dog. No, it was as if it put the fur on itself. One hooved foot tapped against the floor as it began to step inside. As it crouched down, I could see its exposed rib cage hugging a sack of organs weakly inside it. Before I could view its visage, I backed away from the upstairs balcony and into a bedroom. I peeked behind the doorway, waiting for something to happen. The long hand rose from under the balcony. It reached for the skull mounted on the wall. The skull disconnected and fell down into the large hands of the entity. After a brief period of silence, the antlers rose from behind the edge of the balcony. The two hands gripped onto the fence as the thing pulled its whole mass up. The skull was no decoration, it was a mask. The deer skull looked as dead as ever. The eye sockets were empty except for a tiny silver light in each eye. The carpet near the thing froze. The thing's eyes never left me as it stretched its hand closer to me. It was almost like the arm was extending according to the will of the life form, if you could even call it a life form. I breathed heavily, fear washing over. My breath escaped my lips, small clouds of warm steam. I was so concentrated on the Wendigo that I forgot I hadn't come here alone. Kyle had appeared in the doorway, staring at the starving creature. It was so hungry, I just knew it. My primal instincts told me to feed it. I extended my hand hesitantly. The Wendigo directed its clawed hand to me. My finger nudged the cold keratin as we connected. Drew, Kyle squeaked. I slowly turned to him. Kyle backed away from the balcony. The Wendigo pressed the side of its face against the fence, its mouth agape. I could see the humanoid mouth behind the deer skull, dripping with saliva. Its silver eye peered at me. It panted and groaned, trying to inch closer to me. "Drew, stop," Kyle pleaded. I stared at him blankly. The Wendigo knocked over a coffee table, shattering some sort of glass object as it pressed itself against the upstairs balcony. A hand gripped my wrist and yanked me away. I turned to see Lucy scowling at me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed. I hadn't noticed her when I entered the room, so her startling me didn't help my situation. I explained to her that it felt natural, like putting your foot in a shoe or popping your back. It was instinctual. She looked at me like I was crazy. I couldn't blame her. The Wendigo panted, its swollen bovine tongue hanging out the side of its mouth. Lucy squeezed my wrist harder, then let go. "Fine. Be difficult for everyone. I personally don't care if you die or not." She sighed. "But they do." I wasn't sure what she meant. She noticed my confused expression. "You have friends, remember? They care about you. And since I care for them, I don't want them to be grief-stricken. They already have me." She frowned, realizing she said too much. I heard the voice of James shout in fear. The Wendigo turned to see him. Its inner mouth twisted into a frustrated grin. Its gums bled as the jaw squeezed shut. "Jesus," James said in terror. The Wendigo thrust its clawed finger at where I believed James was. I heard a cough, groan, and thud as James collapsed. It dragged James's corpse to the edge and picked it up. I heard the unmistakable sound of chewing, crunching, and ripping. I knew it was safe. I stood up and walked out of my hiding place, down the stairs, past the feeding creature, and out into the cold forest. I averted my gaze from the thing as it ate. I could hear the swaying of its bushy, matted tail. My fear suddenly returned when I left the mansion. My friend was being devoured messily by a beast of folklore. It almost killed me, and I let it. I heard a creak as Lucy and Kyle crept out of the building. The Wendigo gurgled and turned to face us. Its large body was barely illuminated in the dark mansion, yet the crimson blood was clearly visible pooling at its feet. The two looked up at me with a look of pure terror. They descended the porch stairs and stood behind me. The Wendigo stood up, its joints popping and cracking. A gurgle resonated deep in its maw as blood trickled out from its deer skull. Its fingers twitched with every movement. Paralyzed with fear, I could only stare as it made its way towards the front door. A picture frame fell from the wall and landed at the hoof of the starved creature. The Wendigo looked down, its massive antlers scraping against the drywall. It looked down at the shattered glass. The bleached skull reflected in the shards. Its piercing eyes hovered over the printed image. I could not tell what it was, but the image seemed to provoke the entity. It groaned and slashed at the image, tearing it to shreds. The towering, emaciated forest spirit tilted its head and squeezed through the door. Yellow wallpaper hung from its antlers like confetti, occasionally glistening in the stray beams of sun leaking through the clouds. It shuffled closer, its hooves clacking on the wooden porch. The porch creaked and groaned under the weight of the Wendigo. It paused for a moment, its eyes scanning us curiously. It wobbled on its skinny legs and shuddered from the cold. My lips bled as they dried. We stood there for what felt like hours, waiting for the creature to do anything. We couldn't run from it or fight it. However, it didn't appear to want to kill us. Yet, the head stopped turning, its gaze directed at me. Kyle and Lucy watched me, waiting for my reaction. Frozen tears had solidified against their faces. "Why?" The Wendigo whispered, its mystical voice echoing like a divine spirit. I took a step back, startled. However, I remained silent. I wanted to know what it was about to say. "Why do you feel warm?" It spoke slowly, as if processing each word carefully before saying them. "Warm," I stuttered. The Wendigo's fingers twitched involuntarily. It hunched over, peering at me. He was cold when I recovered from him. The Wendigo's eyes darted towards the front door, now stained with blood. But you are warm. I tried unsuccessfully to stop myself from shaking uncontrollably. The Wendigo breathed heavily, each breath an Arctic breeze. It thrust out a thin hand, slashing at me. Before my head was removed, the hand retracted, clutching onto its ribcage. Its long fingers grasped firmly on the chest, squeezing tightly. Startled, the Wendigo looked down at its arm. He is resilient. The famine spirit whispered. Same as you. It pointed to me, gently brushing my cheek with its claw. Something on its hand caught my eye. Right below the thumb, close to the palm, it had 2 red splotches. Birthmarks. The same birthmarks I had. It all made sense. My grandfather was greedy and self-centered. My parents didn't like inviting him to family meetings. He had no interest in me. Still, I didn't expect it to be that bad. The thing that has been pursuing me was my own grandfather. The Wendigo stared me down. It squeezed its own neck until it collapsed. Lucy and Kyle backed away. What? They tried reasoning with themselves. As the Wendigo began to move once more, we ran back to town. A part of me wanted to stay and comfort what was once my grandfather, even if he was trash. I knew that it wouldn't let me see my grandfather again. Clarence Barkley lived his life alone. He accumulated a large amount of money and died alone. The Wendigo took advantage of his greed. Somehow, my grandfather fused with the forest spirit to become a functional entity. That's my current theory, at least. The Wendigo was weak on its own, scrambling desperately to blend with the ecosystem as an autonomous life form. When it gained humanity, it yearned for more. For me, it's been a rough month. Every day, I watch the forest, waiting to hear a whisper or scream. I wait for something to happen. The Wendigo has not appeared since. My friends haven't showed up either, probably because I'm related to a Wendigo. Second story, I was trapped in my car during a snowstorm, and something was trying to get in. I should have turned back an hour ago. The road's gone now, just a whisper under the snow. My wipers gave up 10 minutes back, frozen stiff and smearing white instead of clearing it. Headlights press against the flurry like fists in cotton, doing nothing. I'm not even sure what lane I'm on. Somewhere between Abergavenny and Brecon, on one of those beer roads that snakes between empty farmland and forest. It's been snowing since late afternoon. At first it was soft, flakes that vanished when they hit the windscreen. Now it's thick, wind-driven, snow that sticks, that sinks, that swallows. I pull over because I can't see anymore. Because the steering wheel's vibrating from ice. Because if I go even 10 feet farther, I might not come back. I kill the engine. The world doesn't go quiet. It goes muffled. It's only when the heater dies that I realize how deep the cold is. The silence inside the car is weird. Artificial. The kind that makes you hyper-aware of yourself. The way your jeans crinkle when you shift. The tick of the dashboard settling. Your own breath fogging the air. I check my phone. 7% battery. No signal. Figures. I'm not scared yet. Just annoyed. I pull the blanket from the back seat, wrap it over my legs. Crack open the thermos. Lukewarm coffee. It tastes like burnt pennies. Somewhere in the trees to my left, a branch snaps. I freeze. Just wind. Has to be. I tell myself that a few times. Then I hear something else. A low dragging noise, soft but deliberate. Snow being disturbed. I sit up, peer through the fog windscreen. Nothing but white. 10 minutes pass. Maybe 20. I try to ration the heat in my body. Gloves stay on. I pull my arms inside my coat and cross them over my chest. The cold isn't sharp. It's creeping. A living thing. Finding seams, working its way into joints, ears, ankles. I distract myself. Think about dinner plans. The job I need to call back about. Then I hear it again. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Too slow for deer. Too heavy for fox. It's pacing. Circling. My hand slides toward the driver's side window. Wipes the condensation. There, shape. Tall. Not moving. Just a silhouette behind the snow. I blink. It's gone. Right, I mutter. Right. Okay. I start the car. The engine stutters. Groans. Dies. I try again. Nothing but a click. The battery's frozen or flooded. I swear softly, fogging the inside of the windscreen even more. Behind me, in the mirrors, nothing. I shifted my seat. Try the heater again. Nothing. Now the silence is watching. Half an hour later, my toes are numb. The shape hasn't come back, but something taps the rear window. Once. Soft. Like a knuckle testing glass. I turn around fast enough to make my neck cramp. Nothing. But now I'm sweating under the blanket. Something's out there, and it's not going away. I think about getting out. Digging out. Walking. But where? Even if I knew which direction the road went, I couldn't see 5 feet. And if something is circling me, walking into the white would be like handing a knife. No. I stay. I breathe through my nose. Try not to fog up the windows too much. There's a knock. Driver's side. 3 taps. Rhythmic. Like a question. I flinch so hard the thermos spills on my leg. I turn slowly, heart beating in my throat. There's a shape against the glass. But it's not a hand. It's longer. Jointed the wrong way. Like an elbow that forgot how to be an elbow. It drags downward, squealing faintly against the frozen window. I don't breathe. It vanishes. Then, from the passenger side, laughter. Not loud. Not right. Like someone trying to remember what laughter is supposed to sound like. Too wet. Too slow. I whisper no. No, no, no. The door handle clicks. Once. Twice. Testing. I lean across and lock it manually. My fingers burn from the metal. Then I hunch down behind the steering wheel, eyes barely over the dash. Breathing shallow. Then I see it. Not the whole thing. Just its feet. Hooved. But wrong. Bent too far back, like something stitched together from memory. It's standing directly in front of the car. Facing me. I close my eyes. I count. I listen. When I open them again, it's gone. The snow presses harder against the car now. The air's like needles. I wrap the blanket tighter, curl into myself, tuck my hands under my thighs. Fingers tingling. Teeth chattering. I think of fire. A pub. The smell of frying onions. Then I hear my mother's voice. Outside. Calling my name. Sweetheart. Soft. Sweet. Wrong. She's been dead for 3 years. I shake. Not from the cold this time. From the sound of her feet crunching toward the window. My mother's voice again. Sweetheart. Open the door. She sounds like she used to when I was a boy and stayed too long outside. Warm. Patient. But I'm 36. And she's buried in Bexel. The snow hushes everything but her voice. It weaves in through the glass and stitches itself around my ribs. Sweetheart, please. It's cold. I clamp my hands over my ears. I whisper to myself. I repeat facts. This is not real. I am in a car. I'm suffering mild hypothermia. Auditory hallucinations are common. Then, tap, tap, on the passenger side glass. I dare a look. There's something standing there. Not her. Tall. Covered in matted, wet fur that sticks to a torso too long. Arms that hang low. Its head tilts like a crow listening for something in the soil. I see only the corner of its jaw. Too wide. Loose skin dragging over the bone. And then it smiles. Or tries to. The cheeks pull upward, splitting at the corners like paper. Behind the skin, teeth. Not rows. Layers. I scream without sound. My breath fogs the glass. The thing leans in and whispers in a voice not made for breath. Let me in, sweetheart. I wake up with a jolt. Daylight. Pale, sickly, stretched thin over the horizon. The snowstorm has slowed. Everything's soft still. The car windows are glazed with frost, but nothing's outside. No tracks. No marks. No sign of anything. My joints scream. My mouth tastes like blood. I must have bit my tongue in my sleep. Sleep. God, I slept. With that out there, I unlock the door slowly. Step out into the cold. The snow is almost waist deep but soft now. Powder. I wait around the car. Nothing. But then there. A single hoof print behind the vehicle. Pressed deep. Almost burned in. Like the snow melted around it before re-freezing. I stare at it for a long time. I don't breathe. I make it to the nearest town, just past midday. I walk. 2.5 miles, I think. I don't remember most of it. Just flashes. Tree trunks like columns. Light spinning through branches. A man at a petrol station stares as I stumble inside. He gives me tea. Call someone. When the police come, I tell them I got stuck. Slept in a car. Frostbite at my fingertips. I do not mention the voice, or the smile, or the way it knew my name. They found the car later. They tell me there were scratch marks on all 4 doors. They tell me the roof had been dented inward, like something heavy had lain on it all night. They show me a photo of a trail leading away from a car. A single line of footprints. Then nothing, as if it just disappeared. It's been a week since this happened. I haven't left my flat. I keep the curtains shut, the kettle full, the heating on. Sometimes at night, I think I hear the wind again. Sometimes I swear I see frost on the inside of the window. And once, just once, I thought I heard her voice again, calling my name. But the thing that terrifies me most, I want to answer it. I want to open the door. Because I know, whatever it is, it's not done with me. Third story. Something has followed me back from my camping trip. I'm not superstitious, but this may change my ideology on things. So, now that the boring introduction is out the way, I can describe to you what's happened to me recently. I live out in the Middle East as an expat, but I've been here for 16 years, so I basically count it as home. We have a lot of desert here, and I mean a lot. More than half the bloody country is a desert. So, naturally, outdoorsy people like me go camping quite often under the blanket of the stars and galaxies. There is 1 month of the year when it's possible to go camping without either freezing your ass off or dying from the immense heat. That's the month of February. So, last week a couple of mates and I went on our annual camping trip. To be exact, there are 5 of us, and we all share one big tent, which is nice as we're all like brothers to each other. So, last week we went out there for the night, the 5 of us, and did what you do when camping. We built a bonfire, had some beers, pissed in the fire, and just did general camping stuff. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Now I'm a light sleeper. The moment something makes a noise that's out of the ordinary, I'm up in a flash, wide awake, alert, and ready to take on the danger. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but its sire does creep the hell out of me at night sometimes. Waking up after reading No Sleep to a noise in your bedroom isn't ideal. But anyway, I'm sidetracking. So there we were, 5 of us in the tent, sleeping, when I heard a noise outside. I was awake in milliseconds, but I don't know what woke me up. I lay there, trying to pinpoint this source of noise, when I heard a rustling outside of the tent to my right. We do get desert dogs out there, so I wasn't too startled by it, and tried going back to sleep hoping that it would just go away. Within a few seconds, I had fallen asleep again when I was woken up again by the sound of the tent zipper opening on the outside. I don't know how to describe this, but there was this smell in the air, this metallic smell. If I were to describe the taster, it would be along the lines of tasting like blood. The zipper was opening slowly. I did a quick head count and realized that all of my friends were inside, still sleeping. My heart skipped a beat. I saw from the corner of my eye the hole created by the zip slowly opening, then seeing a yellow, round eye looking in directly at me. That's when I jumped up screaming. I grabbed a torch and started shaking the tent. That woke all my friends up, and when they say what was looking through the gap, they did the same thing. After seeing all of us jumping and screaming, this thing took off. I unzipped the tent and went screaming after it, but then I stopped. The light of my torch lit up this creature, and I just managed to catch a glimpse of it as it went below a rocky sand cliff. It had 4 limbs, almost like a human, but a weird hybrid one. With no hair and long, bony legs, it ran on all 4s faster than any man could run. The skin was a grayish color, wrapped tightly around its body, but full of crevices and scars. Just before it disappeared, it turned its head around, and that's when I really got scared. All it had were 2 large eyes and mouth, full of razor-sharp teeth. It stared at me for a few seconds, then it let out the most hideous screech I've ever heard, like a pig being slaughtered, but with a more guttural undertone. Needless to say, we packed up and got the hell out of there as quick as we could. None of us spoke the entire ride back. We said our goodbyes and made our own ways back home. I had never been so glad to be in my own bed in my own room. I live in a private villa, and I have vegetation around me. Last night, I was coming home, and I heard the screech once again. I sprinted upstairs and switched on the TV, trying to block my kind from thinking about this creature. This morning I woke up and my door had scratches on it, and the doorknob had obvious scratch grooves in it. What is this thing? What if it comes back tonight? What do I do? Update. It's back, oh God, it's back. I was watching TV when I heard it scream. I'm in my bedroom. The door is locked, and I'm burning some incense. I have a Bible in one hand and a knife in the other. I'm funking scared, guys. If I don't make it out, at least one of you will know what happened to me. I just heard my sliding door rattling. It's looking for a way in. No time to type. I must get prepared for the worst. Pray for me, Guy. Mom, Dad, I love you. Fourth story. Be warned. There are bad people who live in the woods. Have you guys ever seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Many of you probably have, but for those who haven't, it's your run-of-the-mill slasher horror flick made in the 1970s, I think. Hold on, let me check. Yeah, that's right, 1974. It's considered one of the best horror films ever made. When I first watched it, it seemed to really hit home for me, much more than it did for my brothers when we were younger. I was 11 at the time, and we had sneaked a copy of it into our house from our friend who lent it to us at the time. Now, I would have to say one of my biggest fears is being kidnapped and being surrounded by inbred, bats-hit crazy people. So needless to say, when I saw this, there were more than a few sleepless nights with my light on. But did you know it was based on a true story? Just the thought that there were real, actual lunatics like that in the world just made my stomach churn. But what are the chances that you would ever find yourself in a situation like that? Let me tell you all, and this post will serve as a warning to anyone who thinks that the United States doesn't still have its fair share of crazies. Listen to me right now. There are people out there who live in the woods. There are many of them, and I would bet that there are some that live in your state, and they're possibly the most dangerous and bats-hit crazy people you will ever encounter. They are not to be tampered with. If they find you on their turf, and God forbid capture you, then you might as well be better dead. When groups of people begin to isolate themselves for a long time, many of whom participate in interbreeding, they become something much more different than a human. Their primal instincts and violent tendencies become amplified, as well as their intelligence and empathy becoming non-existent. So no sleep, I would like to tell you about my most terrifying experience and my first and hopefully last encounter with these people. I will not give any real names or locations on where this occurred, as I fear some of you might get the bright idea of trying to find this place for yourself. So it started over the summer. A few of my friends and I decided we wanted to go on a camping trip. Weird, right? For dudes going into the wilderness with no girls and sleeping in tents. Well, we used to do this when we were kids, so it was kind of a nostalgic trip. We hadn't noticed anything when we were teenagers. It would always be an annual night of fun in the outdoors. We would drink, tell stories, laugh, cry, the whole deal. We live relatively close to the woods, so our parents would let us go up, but only once a year. So anyway, back on topic, it had been 5 or 6 years since we last went up there. We all parted our separate ways when we went to college. We would occasionally all go on Facebook to talk about our lives. So we all finished college, got jobs, and I decided to call them up. I managed to get a hold of 2 friends, and they were both up for it. My other friend moved all the way out of Florida, and he was busy with work and shit, so he couldn't come back to our home state. We brought a bunch of gear and supplies, as well as a couple of other things like beer and food. We were ready to relive our high school days as best friends. We got onto the trail at about 5 p.m. We hiked on the trail, and I swear it was like we were back in high school. We talked about everything happening in our lives. We were laughing so hard at the college stories, we were practically choking. We finally got to our campgrounds at about 8 p.m. We were all set up by 9, and we lit up the fire and cracked open a beer. We told stories for about 3 hours, and we decided to call a night. Now, there are many rumors in my area about these people in our area who have been isolated for some time now. We had never seen any sign of them when we were younger, so we had no reason to ever be worried about them. I don't know if they relocated or moved or something, but basically what I'm trying to say is they should have never been there. They should have never known we were there. I woke up in the middle of the night and looked at my phone. It was around 2:30 in the morning, and for some reason, I couldn't sleep. For about an hour, I just laid in the tent, just staring at nothing. That's when I heard it. That's when I heard them. It sounded like a pack of wolves or something walking about our camping grounds. I was already losing my shit at this point, but when I really shit myself was when I realized it didn't sound like animal breathing. The way the steps were moving and the breathing patterns were just too human that there was no way they were animals. I stayed absolutely silent. There was no noise for a brief period, and for a moment I thought I was just imagining it. Then I heard whispering. All I could make out was, after we gut them, who's going to get their livers? At this point, my fight or flight instincts kicked in. It was officially go time. I decided that there were too many of them. I swear to God now that I'm remembering it, there must have been a dozen of them at least. I nudged my buddy to wake up. He just turned around and looked at me with eyes that told me what? I put my finger over my mouth and motioned with my hand that we needed to go. He nudged the other friend, and we could clearly hear them talking now. We all stayed absolutely still for 30 seconds, and I took out my Swiss Army knife. I took out my phone for my flash, and I was ready to bolt out there. Then I heard one of them scream, "Them are awake." I immediately jumped out of my tent, and I got one good look at all of them with my flash. They were disgusting creatures. Their teeth were all deformed, and their heads were gigantic. Their ears were huge and perked up like dogs. They were all much bigger than us. I would assume they were all around 6 feet 4 inches. We left everything. We completely bolted out of the area as fast as we could. I could hear them all chasing after us for a couple of minutes. My adrenaline was at maximum levels, and I wanted nothing more than to get out of the woods. I could hear them cackling as they were trying to track us down. After 2 full hours of running downhill, we finally jumped in the car and called the police. We told them everything that happened. Here's what the cops said in response. "You must have had an encounter with a nickname for a group of people. They happen frequently in this area. Just don't go back there." What? I explained to him that they were about to skin us alive, and we left all our shit there. All he could say was, "I'm sorry for your loss, sir, but I would advise you to not go back." I was in complete shock. I have done a lot of research on the group of people the officer told us about after that incident. Some of the stories are horrifying. Many cases of missing men, women, and children, all leading back to this one group of people. The police refused to infringe this group of people in fear of retaliation. There needs to be stop to this. A lot of nights, I keep lying awake in bed thinking about what would have happened had I fallen asleep. I still think about it to this day. It has become very difficult for me to fall asleep after that, knowing that sleep could have let my guard down and gotten me killed. I don't know if you guys have any experiences like this. Feel free to discuss it in the comments. I just needed to get this off my chest. I haven't been the same since then, and I feel like this might add some closure. Have a nice day, everyone. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to Horror in Detail for more videos. Drop your suggestions in comment section.